joining us. This is also being recorded for wider dissemination afterwards, but really delighted that for our last show and tell before the Easter holidays kick in, certainly for those with sort of school dates to keep in mind, delighted to welcome Martyn Wallace, the Chief Digital Officer at the Digital Office for Scottish Local Government. Really pleased to come and hear from an organisation that, well, we often say that London is looking to Scotland all the time to figure out what we should be doing next. And certainly I think it's very true that for LOTI, we're looking to the work that Martyn and his team do, given that there's not many organisations, frankly, that look like LOTI, that are trying to do that sort of pan-local government collaboration. So Martyn, very pleased to be able to have you here today, not only to share some lessons, but also noting you're a CIO 100 on the CIO 100 list for the last 3 years. So as well as being a stand-up comedian and a global digital evangelist, and you've only prepared, I note today, 574 slides to share with us. I hope that's part of the humour, but let's go straight over to you to tell us a bit about your work. I'll then pose a few questions, and then to everyone else on the line, we'll very much welcome your own questions to Martyn afterwards.
Thanks, Eddie. So it's not a lie. There is 574 slides. I'm hoping your internet connection is good because it's a YouTube video. Maybe a bit grainy. It might work. It might not work. And I'm just going to read through every single slide as well. We've got, I think, 5 minutes, so you better strap yourselves in. I am Scottish. I am Glaswegian. I do speak 1,000 miles an hour. I do stand-up comedy, as Eddie says, on the side as well. So hopefully this will entertain you. Probably won't, but good luck anyway. Next slide, please, Mr. So back in 2019, we had an extension to the original 3-year Digital Office programme. We were set up in 2016 to help with transformation and acceleration of digital and local government in Scotland. In 2019, we created a new business plan, which I've just kind of shown the assets or the portfolio we agreed to. And then something called coronavirus hit a year ago, just now. So that was kind of ripped up and started again, but there was themes that we're already pushing through, which we'll talk about through the presentation, which interlink on the back of COVID, which interlinked into the original plan. And now we're in a stage where we're looking for a permanency at the moment to continue past September this year. And I'll talk a little bit through the presentation. Next slide, please. I'm going to love this, Eddie. So skills. So we'll talk about skills because you asked about skills in health and care. So we work with SCVO. SCVO, Scottish Charity and Voluntary Organisation, have the Digital Participation Charter for Scotland. And through that, they developed a digital essentials portfolio of training. So we worked with them to start to train the trainer and the councils 2 years ago. It was put on hold because of the COVID pandemic, and they were switched roles into helping on Connecting Scotland, which was to help vulnerable people. So in Scotland, we got some funding. We did it for education. I got 30 million for education. We rolled out 70,000 devices in kind of vulnerable families, vulnerable children also got devices, and SCVO then started to train them up via online tools, how to use the devices, etc. as well. So SCVO have been kind of the heart of supporting us for this, but that's kind of the essential range of basic skills. Above that, we've been working with SPDS, the Scottish Society of Personal Directors, and we have looked at other kind of ranges of essential tools you need in a digital workforce. So things like data, service design, cyber, collaboration tools using Teams or something else, but we are trying to standardise on Teams in Scotland for collaboration. I'll talk about that separately shortly. And also, we've talked about maybe providing selling skills. So if you are conceptualizing or trying to create a digital service, you have to get your stakeholders online. You have to make sure that you've got all your pain points sorted. So we've looked at doing sales skills as well, and that's something that we've done in Digital Office. In the collaboration space, NHS NSS, National Shared Service, rolled out Teams over a weekend for all NHS employees in Scotland. Police Scotland are in the process of rolling out Teams. We've already got an education platform, Glow, in Scotland, which has got Teams already on it. So we're working to create one standardised collaboration platform to help with multifunction teams looking after vulnerable people. So that's why the collaboration tools is kind of based around the Teams area. DDAT roles, we did some mapping before COVID, which we completed. And now we've just kicked off some work with SPDS around about how do we recruit, retrain, and retain staff in that space as well. In November last year, we launched a playbook with SPDS on managing supporting teams remotely, because obviously this is going to be here to stay. We're not necessarily going to open up big buildings as we go back to normal, But in that, we've also started to build on that as well, to look at the tools, repository, job descriptions, standardising the bits and pieces and pulling it together in one repository for HR, OD staff across Scotland as well. And then lastly, in the skills area, there's been a commitment in the Digital Scotland strategy, which was a co-written strategy between local government and Scottish government, which was launched just a couple of weeks ago, that we will be looking at skills across the, the collaborative, not only just for our staff, but also for the nation as well. All this work we do links into health and care as well. I've been sitting on a workforce planning group for digital health and care, which will be a nice segue into a second. But this all interlinks with what we do in that area as well. So it means if you're a health professional, care professional, you'll all have the same skill set. You'll all have the same training. So you're interoperable, but also means that we've got a benchmark that we can actually do. But the digital office has led on that for the last couple of years. Next slide. So health and care. Next slide. So 2018, we launched the Digital Health and Care Strategy in Scotland. If you want to move on, Eddie. Next slide. Was it stuck?
It's
jumped ahead a little bit. That's okay. So there were 6 key areas of domains. So there's 6 key areas of domains we looked at in 2018 about national direction, about workforce capability, which I've just touched on, a national digital platform and transition process as well, using digital maturity. We're working on, if you go to the next slide, this is 2 years old. We've had COVID, so there's actually a refresh due, and it was due out like this week. But because we've had a focus on the vaccination programme, we've got PURDA coming up very, very shortly. In fact, next week, next Friday, because of the Scottish elections and because of just basic COVID in general, it's been delayed until probably around about after the summer. But what we're doing is building on what we've done in the last 12 months in COVID. We're also looking at the adult social care independent review that's been done recently to look at lessons learned that we can actually incorporate into this. One thing was looking at a national care service. We've said, okay, we'll look into that, but how can we actually bring this to life digitally? So currently working behind the scenes with COSLA, who represent our elected members, you'll call it LGA down south, to try and look at how do we actually then fundamentally build pillars and principles around this to help with support going forward. There's 2 sub-strategies during the new digital health and care strategy, one on data, one on cloud. But fundamentally what we have seen, and I'll touch on very, very shortly, is about data interoperability, because when the proverbial hits the fan, if your information is not good, if you can't not share stuff, then you cannot react in the right way to support communities. So fundamentally, the data stuff will be a pillar of how do we actually then support that going forward. So as I said, the new date for that is the end of summer. And if you go to the next slide, which should be my last slide, hopefully. In fact, there's a couple more slides. The cross-sector data task force was set up a year ago next week, and it was based, the Digital Office set it up. It was through conversations I had with colleagues in Scottish Government, health, police, communities, academia. So we created a cross-sector data task force to help work on common business problems to help support with getting the right data to the right place with the right time to make the right decisions to support the communities. This has been handed back to Scottish Government to run. It's run, we have weekly calls on this one, but this is going to be kind of the pillar that we're going to have as part of the data and digital health and care strategy going forward, because this model works, we've got the right people on it, and we're quite quick to respond. So one thing we did do was bring in feeds of health data from Public Health Scotland. We did a proof of concept in Glasgow, and now that's rolled out to 7 other areas at the moment, including Edinburgh. And if you know the Scottish dynamic, Glasgow and Edinburgh don't really talk. It's like West Coast, East Coast gang warfare. So that was kind of a fundamental great thing in itself. If you want to move on to the next slide. And the other thing just to reflect on is the Digital Telecare piece. So if you move on to the next slide, Eddie. As well as being CDO for Digital Office, I'm the Senior Responsible Officer for Digital Telecare, analog to digital switchover of services in 2023. So by 2025, existing analog services will be switched off and it'll be moved to digital connectivity. So if you go to the next slide, Eddie, we set up a group with some funding from Scottish Government to look at the challenges around about this, new business models, new practices, and accreditation that would be required to actually make this a reality, to make sure everybody is moved over and nobody's lost in that transition and nobody's made left vulnerable for it. Through that, we created a Digital Telecare playbook. We've had interest across the whole world, funnily enough, on this piece. But we are looking at different pathways around about the business case to move to digital transformation. So digital telecare, cybersecurity, procurement, technical solutions standards. And over and above that, we've also created an accreditation scheme for suppliers, which we've got our first 2 solutions on. We'll have another 5 by next week, but that's growing exponentially. And our first digital telecare service was switched on in February by Falkirk Council. So we're kind of using them as the test bed with others, but they've been the very first to go to look at lessons learned and how do we then build on that going forward as well. So that kind of interlinks into health, links into care, but kind of shows the kind of the size of the program that we're actually doing. And I'll stop there for questions. If you want to go to the last slide, Eddie, I'll cancel that one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank
Hopefully
you.
Kept up there. That was about 100 miles an hour at the end. I was like, I'm running out of time.
That was very good indeed. And tell you what, I'm going to stop sharing my slides so that that was going jolty anyway, and then I can actually see all you good people. So, I mean, the portfolio that you're looking after there is incredibly, well, it looks quite daunting and very impressive. I guess a base level question, certainly from a LOTI perspective and for the LOTI community, is can you tell us a bit more about the journey that you've been on as an organisation to figure out with Scottish local authorities, where do they see value in collaborating? Like, has it been obvious where they want to do it, or has it emerged over time? Where are you finding the most value?
So the first iteration we did, we had 25 councils who set up the office, digital office. It was originally 8, there was 25, and we've got 32, so there was 7 elusive, but over kind of using sales techniques and stuff, we got them all involved. Our first partnership forum, so we hold 2 partnership forums a year. We discuss kind of the metrics, what's happening, what's prioritised. The very first one, we had done consultative sales almost with all the councils, or 25 councils, to say, what does digital mean to you? And some mentioned like robotics, AI. Others said, we've got a website, we've done it. And we're saying, no, it's a little bit more than that. So we developed a kind of a repository of requests. We then went back to the council and said, right, on terms of priority and time, where are you with this? And then they self-organised, and then we created a master plan in the room. This was at a partnership forum. And then we said, right, okay, over to you. Who's the best one on this? Discuss at your tables, who is it? And then talk with each other and who could lead on this, who's got the best experience in this, and then we put it up. So that was the kind of the first iteration. On the back of that, we launched a digital maturity assessment. So I know Julia Whittle's on here from Microsoft, but Julia was working at Gartner. We worked closely with Gartner at the time. We worked with others to create a digital maturity assessment from 1 to 5. And through the consultation we do with senior management teams, with heads of service, with elected members, sometimes with teachers, we get to build up a bigger picture of how mature is the council. So we've done 21 councils by this May across the piece, delayed because of COVID. But from that, we are able to understand, well, where's their gaps? Where's their exemplars? And then we can almost like Cilla Black or like blind, well, not so blind date. We can then match up different areas of, well, do you know, so-and-so's got that, Aberdeen City's got that, Glasgow's got that, Edinburgh's got that. So it creates that collaborative hub. And then over and above that, we created communities on Microsoft Teams on certain specialist areas. So we've got a Driven by Data squad, which are doing a whole range of stuff in the back of the Cross-City Data Task Force. Again, things that the people have tried and failed before, but I think just the timing's been right with COVID. So with that, what we've done is we've created communities where people ask out questions to their peers and then they collaborate together. So we kind of facilitate a lot of programs and processes. But at the other side of things, we actually then develop other programs and then find out who could lead, participate, or follow in it.
That's really interesting. And so if we can just check everyone's on mute, if you're not, Martyn, thank you very much. And you've mentioned, so it's great where you can look to local authorities who are like real leaders in their area and they can offer help to others. Interested in that context on the digital skills piece, because given organisations are at very different stages of their digital maturity, how have you started thinking about how you help them on that skills development journey, given they're at different levels and the world is moving at the same time and changing?
So SPDS has been a kind of our professional body we work with, because that represents all HR and OD in local authorities. So that's been kind of the first thing, find the professionals, and then work with them to understand, well, what does it mean to be digital? What is the workforce planning looking like? How do we support them with, well, here's DDAT skills, here's stuff we're taking from GDS. We're not reinventing wheels. Why should we? We've got no time or patience for that. And then working with them to fill that gap. So that's how we've kind of done the skills piece. It's been interesting because we've now seen an emergence. I was the first chief digital officer, I think, in local government, Europe-wide, maybe worldwide. But we're now seeing chief digital officers pop up in different councils. So Colin Birchnell, who's my CTO, works half the week with me and is CDO for Glasgow now. There's controversy in the Daily Record a couple of weeks back because North Ayrshire Council got some extra funding and wanted to get a chief digital officer to help them with digital transformation. And some of the elected members went off on one saying, no, absolutely not. They should be putting that into social services and stuff. So we're now seeing a development of CDO roles in the councils. But fundamentally, we all talk about data scientists. We can't recruit them. They're too expensive. So how do we then pool resources? What new models can we look at across Scotland to help support what we need to do to make that transformation realised? So they are on different stages of their journey, but they've all got the same challenges trying to recruit. We've got a very, very healthy tech sector, especially the central belt of Scotland, which you can get, a lot more money than you would do in public sector. So that's more enticing to go there. So we have to figure out how do we entice, how do we retrain our staff, and how do we then retain them so they don't go elsewhere once they've got that knowledge.
Very similar considerations, obviously, in a London context as well. So again, fascinated to learn from the journey that you've been on there. I've got a couple more questions lined up, but very happy to hand over to others if you do want to raise your hand or to comment in the chat. But just one more from me. You've spoken as well. You gave us a bit of a sense of your work on care tech or assistive technology, as we mostly call it with our community. And you mentioned the different aspects of that, from interoperability to making sure the cybersecurity is right. One thing that fascinates us is how we don't fall into that classic digital government trap of getting the shiny new tech and chucking it into the same old ways of working. Could you tell us a bit more about how the service design conversations happen alongside the tech conversations?
So you should never go for looks, you should go for quality. That's why I was single for such a long time, Eddie. So the shiny new tech, we have seen instances already where we've got failed calls because providers are already switching over, right? They are switching over to the new services. So we've got people who are getting a digital telephone line, they're plugging their existing Tunstall box or other brands are available, and it's not working and we're getting a failed call. So we have to work with the industry and we have to work with the user and we have to work with the service provider to make to understand, look, this is a slightly more complex than you're thinking, and you have to think differently for this. The service design piece, we are working with some of the service providers to create new pathways, new ways of working. We've teamed up through some funding from the EU with Norway and Spain to look at their models and how do we then shift them across here, because that's proactive rather than reactive. So things like loneliness is a big challenge for us all in service providing. So proactive stuff, just phoning in each morning rather than reactive when they press dependent, means it's different. And also with this shiny new tech, there's a whole lot of things about bringing your own technology in. So your wearables in the house, your smartwatches. So we've got to look at how does this then incorporate into that service design. So there is service design all the way through it. We do consult with service providers and end users, and it's just that evolving journey, which is then transmitted back to the playbook in terms of findings, etc.
That's great. So looking out, digesting what others have done, bringing it back and consolidating that knowledge, feels like very, very important work. And again, another area where we'll be keen to look to you. Paul, are you asking a question there? Are councils in Scotland participating in IT returners programme?
I don't know what the IT returners programme is. Sorry.
That might be a no in that case. The link to explore there. Conscious we're virtually out of time. Sorry, this has been a very brief session and so much more that we could pick up on in a longer one. But keen just to finish up with any reflections you've got on life after COVID, life after lockdown, future of work, future of service transformation. Is this totally shifting your agenda, or is it re-emphasizing that what you've been doing, the core is the core?
I think it's kind of re-emphasized as well. Shift. It's been a horrendous time for all of us. Let's be honest here, but I think it has kind of fundamentally shown how digital can actually support. It's the last lever we can pull to make the savings we need to do, as well as increase outcomes. So hopefully we'll see a much more kind of acceptance of it. We have seen CTOs and CIOs who may have been down the chain before become the chief exec's new best friend because of the pandemic, and that's in private and public sector. It's not just local government. So I think this is here to stay. I think it's how do we sustain it and how do we get the investment we actually require in it. And I think it's also having the conversations, maybe even using sales skills to understand that return on investment is key in terms of getting as many people onto digital channels as possible so we can reinvest into the have-nots, the vulnerable people who don't have access to the technology, and make sure that our community is supported in the right way.
Sounds spot on, and definitely we've noticed from our side, I think elected members, also so the chief exec level, senior management, looking at digital in data with a whole new sort of relevance and importance right now, which is great to see. We are out of time. I think we need to set up a much longer session, albeit being mindful you're a very busy man. Thank you for sharing some of your work with us this morning. Best of luck with it all. Been wonderful to start a Friday this way, and hope to check in with you soon. For now, though, thank you to you. Thank you to everyone for sharing and for joining us today, and we'll catch up again very soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eddie. Cheers.
Take care.
See you later.